The biomechanical monsters from the alien universe are present in several distant quarters of space, and we've seen it in so many alien movies. But where do they come from? It's believed that Xenomorph Prime is their home planet, but is it really their indigenous planet? If so, what does it look like? What's its history? Well, in this video, we'll answer this, while exploring every piece of work in which the Xenomorph Prime appeared. So, without further ado, let's begin. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. Now, this is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. What exactly is the alien's homeworld? Is it the only one out there? Xenomorph Prime is known to man by many names. Some call it A6454, G435, Homeworld, Hive World, and even Achilles. Why Achilles? Well, human scientists found it as the fourth planet revolving around a star called the Achilles II, which was located 61.4 light-years away from Earth in the Achilles system. Now, it is believed that this one was a major xenomorph hive world that was home to other alien species as well, including natural predators of xenomorphs. Anyway, because the scientists believe that this was a major hive world, there's a possibility that there are other xenomorph hive worlds as well, but we're completely oblivious to them. In such a case, for all intents and purposes, it's safe to assume that Xenomorph Prime is the only homeworld to these biomechanical minions of hell. In fact, human scientists later figured out for sure that the xenomorph population on Xenomorph Prime was not indigenous. They were either brought to the planet intentionally, maybe for an experiment or to understand their pattern and behavior in the wild, or they arrived on this planet with a crashed ship, probably an engineer ship. Irrespective of this, Xenos went on to claim the planet and became the dominant species. They built several obnoxiously large and heavily populated hives, which were all controlled by their supreme leader, the Queen Mother. This being was basically the matriarch of all Xenos in the universe, and she could telepathically communicate with all of them. In fact, she was so powerful that she could even invade the dreams of humans, and I'll talk about this later in the video. What's the geography, flora, and fauna of Xenomorph Prime like? It is believed that the planet was at least as large as Earth and comprised 3 major and few minor continents. Furthermore, it had a small ocean, but we don't know if it was filled with water or some other liquid. The possibility of the latter is higher. Because of the twin star system, the planet was locked in a constant state of dusk. This also led to an increase in temperature and humidity, but the atmosphere was largely breathable for humans. Apart from the land and ocean, the planet also had swamps and desert wasteland within the continents. The most important mineral or resource here was the royal jelly produced by the Queen Mother. It became a commodity so valuable that many expeditions were launched to Xenomorph Prime. People risked their lives and dared to face Xenos for this stuff. G435, or Xenomorph Prime, didn't really have any dense forests or much diversity as far as flora was concerned, but it did have several indigenous species of animals, including avian creatures, reptiles, and mammals. Needless to say, these creatures often served as hosts for the xenomorphs. Also, as I was telling you earlier, there was at least one natural predator of the xenomorphs. Interestingly, the xenomorphs on G435 were more agile and stronger than those found in other planets and moons, and I guess this has something to do with their population. You see, Xenos of one hive are fairly aggressive against their brethren from other hives, so they have to defend themselves from their own kind. In other celestial bodies, they only have to contend with other species, say humans, who are much weaker than xenomorphs. Naturally, their struggle to survive on their home planet requires them to develop speed, strength, and agility. They also have varying colors as far as the exoskeletons are concerned. I believe this happens because of the secretion of varying pheromones, which differentiates the member of one hive from another. So, I was talking about the expeditions, right? Okay, and let's explore all of them one by one, and I believe you're in for a ride. Aliens Outbreak, the first visit to Xenomorph Prime. So I'll talk a bit about Newt and Hicks from James Cameron's Aliens, because they'll appear in a few other entries as well. It's still a part of the comic, so it should be fine. So, here we go. 10 years after the fall of Hadley's Hope on LV-426, Newt finds herself in Fieldcrest Home, a psychiatric institution. Of course, someone didn't want her secrets to come out. Someone wanted to hide her story. Meanwhile, Hicks remains with the Colonial Marines, but is largely ostracized by his peers, who suspect he might be carrying an alien infection after his lengthy quarantine upon returning to Earth. Now, you must know that this story was written after James Cameron's Aliens and served as a direct sequel to the same. That's why Hicks and Newt are still alive. But after the release of Alien 3, which killed both of them, Dark Horse reprinted the story and changed the names and origins of Hicks and Newt. Anyway, we'll still call them what they're supposed to be called. So, both Newt and Hicks are haunted by nightmares of their ordeal from the movie, how they were forced to fight this entire xenomorph hive and their queen and all that. At Fieldcrest, a nurse warns Newt not to share details of her treatment with her visitor, who turns out out to be Hicks. He informs her that his crew is heading to the Xenomorph homeworld, and Newt desperately begs him to take her along. But how could he? I mean, this thing would be super risky for someone like Newt, who's not trained to face the horrors that Xenomorph Prime would put before them. She also tells Hicks how the hospital staff have been intentionally trying to mess with her mind, using drugs. But before the conversation can continue, she's forcibly taken away by orderlies, leaving Hicks calling out for her in vain. Later, Dr. Hill and Dr. Hannah inform Newt that she's scheduled for brain surgery, something she can't say no to because her consent is insignificant. On the other hand, Hicks receives a call from his superior Perkins, who orders him to report to Colonel Stevens, and they'd recently acquired a horrifyingly disturbing video disc. The footage shows a Coast Guard spaceship approaching a derelict vessel called the Junket, which is drifting abandoned in Earth's orbit. The Coast Guard sends a probe inside to investigate. The probe's feed shows a dead body, burn marks through the ship's interior, and the message "Kill us all" scrawled in blood on one of the walls. Clearly, something pretty sinister went down on this ship. When the probe detects movement, the crew sets an explosive charge and destroys the derelict. But when the probe returns, the Coast Guard team is shocked to discover it's brought back a xenomorph. This unwelcome passenger on board begins slaughtering the crew, and the video abruptly cuts off as the ship is terminated with no survivors. When Hicks arrives at Colonel Stevens' office, he's introduced to Dr. Odona. Now, this person would prove to be very important in understanding Xenomorph Prime and the behavior of these biomechanical monsters. Odona reveals that he has the flight log from the Junket, including all its course data, and offers Hicks a shot at redemption. In exchange for his help securing a live xenomorph specimen, Hicks could potentially wipe the slate clean. Tempting, indeed. With less than 12 hours before the Benedict's departure, Hicks learns of Newt's situation and decides to take matters into his own hands. He breaks into Fieldcrest home and breaks her free. As hospital security closes in, he sets plastic explosives against an exterior wall, blasting an escape route. The two leap from the high-rise into the safety of a waiting rescue ship. After their escape, Hicks smuggles Newt aboard the Benedict and puts her in cryosleep as they journey to the alien homeworld. Meanwhile, aboard the bionational spaceship K-014, Patrick Massey briefs his crew on their mission. They're to board the government vessel Benedict through an airlock on its aft side, the same place where Newt was in cryosleep, and take the crew hostage until the ship reaches its destination, before destroying the Benedict and ensuring no one made it out alive. If it's not clear yet, Bionational was a multinational like Weyland-Yutani, and like Weyland-Yutani, Bionational was also interested in unethical use of xenomorphs. The initial part of the plan works perfectly, and Hicks is captured and held prisoner aboard the Benedict, while the rest of the Marines are deployed unarmed on the planet's surface to act as bait for the xenomorphs. Xenomorph Prime, as depicted here, is mostly how I described it earlier. More details are revealed in the later stories. Despite their efforts, most of the Marines are killed or captured by the xenomorphs, with only a few survivors, led by Buella, making it into a large hive to attempt a rescue. On the Benedict, Newt manages to rescue Hicks and kills Massey, taking control of the ship. They head planetside to rescue any remaining survivors, finding only 3: a Benedict crew member, Blake, and Buella. Oh, and a space jockey, aka an engineer, also comes out of nowhere and helps the Earthlings. Anyway, before leaving the planet, Hicks launches a coordinated nuclear strike and wipes out the entire area. By the time Hicks, Newt, Butler, and the other survivors return to Earth, it's already too late. They land at one of the last remaining secure military bases, only to discover that it's about to be overrun and the military's retreating, leaving millions of civilians to face certain death. Desperate, the 3 of them manage to stow away on an automated cargo ship called the American, which had been pre-programmed to rendezvous with surviving military forces at an undisclosed location. As the ship departs the dying planet, the survivors encounter the alien vessel again, the creature having followed them from the Xenomorph homeworld. It communicates telepathically with Newt, who learns that the creature might not have very nice intentions about Earth, and actually doesn't give 2 hoots about the fate of humans. After all, engineers are not Transformers. Speaking of which, are you excited about Transformers 1? Anyway, let's not digress. So yeah, with no clear destination and the weight of uncertainty bearing down on them, Hicks, Newt, and Butler enter hypersleep, awaiting whatever fate awaits them at the ship's unknown destination. Aliens, Theory of Alien Propagation, an in-universe guide into Xenomorph Prime and reproduction. So, I was talking about Dr. Waislaw Odona earlier, right? He was a geneticist and a scientist working with the Terran government, and also served the USCM Corps as an advisor, a civilian advisor. He initially wanted a xenomorph for his weapons research, but later on he spent his time in finding out a plan to destroy all xenos on Earth. Unfortunately, the man gave up his own life to evade his fate as a xeno incubator, but Odona left a detailed record on xenomorphs in his Theory of Alien Propagation, a piece of work that deals with xenomorph reproduction and their homeworld. Let's check out what he had to say. He says, as a matter of practical fact, much of what we presume to know about the alien life form is conjecture. However, amidst the theory, there are 2 absolute unequivocal facts. 1, they are not like us. and 2, we will never truly understand them. Judging from the aliens' dense exoskeleton and remarkable adaptability, we must assume their homeworld to be a harsh, desolate environment. We know from the encounter on Acheron that the aliens have a queen-based hierarchy. We also know they form hives to protect their young. At some point, perhaps cyclical, the hive's queen must sense the instinctive need to propagate new colonies and lay eggs that will later hatch as queen larvae. At the proper time, the drones provide host bodies for the fledgling queens. For many in the research community, this parasitical breeding process is the single most disturbing aspect of the entire alien phenomenon. Given the aliens' legendary temperament, it's likely that these special breeding eggs are quickly removed from the queen's chamber and sheltered elsewhere. Of course, for the aliens, it's a completely natural equivalent of giving a bottle to a baby. Then he goes on a bit longer about how the hive works and all of that. But let's get to the part where he talks about Xenomorph Prime. He says, all ecosystems exist in a delicate state of balance. This would be as true of the alien homeworld as ours. At home, the aliens would have any number of natural enemies. Some would live, some would die, and the alien herd would be kept in check. The bodies of the dead would be used to reinforce the walls of the hive. The cycle would continue, and the ecosystem would survive. The violent, uncontrollable alien infestations occurred when the creatures were removed from their natural habitat. The end result is all that matters. Somehow, the aliens were transplanted to other worlds. We can only guess how this might have happened. Perhaps it was millions of years ago, perhaps only decades. The creatures would not be concerned with the particulars of their environment. They would concern themselves only with circumstances. The natural predators were gone. The balance was gone. All that was left was prey. We humans believe our technology has made us invincible and that we've evolved beyond the simple notion of predator and prey. Certainly, there was no reason for the crews of the Nostromo or the Sulaco or the settlers on Acheron to believe otherwise. Man has never been comfortable in space, even with our ships and atmosphere suits and weapons. We are intruders. A hostile environment with ample quarry. The aliens must have felt utterly at home. Humans have confused comfort with survival. For us, mere existence isn't enough. We demand the accoutrements of life as well. The aliens make no such demands. They live in a very simple world. They live to kill. They live to breed. And finally, they survive. Aliens, female war. Ripley goes to alien homeworld. In this one, Ripley rallied a crew from the space station's stranded military team, tempting them with the chance to get back in the fight. She got Hicks on board as the pilot for a ship she modified with a gravity drive and an acid-proof cargo hold. Ripley, using her previous experiences, convinced Captain McQuaid to repurpose Gateway Station's power loaders, transforming them into military machines. Her plan was to capture the Mother Queen from the aliens' homeworld, haul her back to Earth, and use her as bait to draw all the other aliens to one spot. The end game was to detonate multiple nuclear warheads that Dr. Oriner had planted before he met his end, taking out the whole nest in one big bang. Thanks to the ship's gravity drive, they reached their destination in record time. Brewster flew the squad planetside in a souped-up lander, while Ripley, Hicks, Newt, and the rest of the volunteers rolled out in an APC to hunt the Mother Queen. Falk, Carvey, and Dunstan went ahead on foot, stumbling upon a massive network of egg sacs oozing with some nasty jelly. Things went sideways fast. Falk was the only one who made it out alive after a brutal encounter with the Queen's guards. With their APC on its last legs, Ripley suited up and went after the Queen herself, using the wrecked vehicle as cover. Brewster swooped in with the dropship just in time for Ripley to wrangle the alien Queen into containment. He then swung back to rescue the stranded crew, blasting off just as the APC's reactor went nuclear. As global temperatures on Earth plummeted by 15 to 20 degrees, the transmissions from Amy, Paul, and Ben abruptly stopped. Aliens had cut off power to the supply uplinks. Meanwhile, back on Gateway Station, Ripley kept a close eye on the alien Queen, still trapped in her pod, while Captain McQuaid tracked Earth's weird temperature drop to an energy source in space. It turned out to be an alien ship, using terraforming tech to mess with the planet. That's when Newt dropped a bombshell, recalling her lost run-in with these extraterrestrials in Aliens Outbreak. She believed they destroyed the detonator for Dr. Oniner's bombs and were using some kind of telepathic control to manipulate her crew into wiping out the alien threat on Earth, only so they could terraform the planet and wipe out any remaining humans. Despite these revelations, Ripley was dead set on revenge. She decided to go ahead with her plan to take down the aliens on Earth, no matter the cost. She and Hicks rallied their crew and headed to the ship, leaving Newt behind for her safety. While Ripley's team dove underground to reconnect the undetonated nukes, Newt had her own plan. She hijacked a cargo ship from Gateway and flew herself to Earth, determined to rescue Amy by tracking her last known coordinates. Newt's mission was successful. Sort of. She found the source of Amy's last transmission, but discovered the horrifying truth. Amy had been captured by humans under the Queen's control and taken to be part of their breeding stock. Even worse, Amy was now deep within the nuclear blast zone Ripley's team was about to set off. After releasing the Mother Queen into the blast zone, Ripley stumbled upon Newt and Ben both trying to sneak into the same mountainside cave to rescue Amy. When Ben got injured, he was sent back to the ship, leaving Ripley and Newt to press on in the APC, determined to save Amy. The mission was brutal, a fierce battle against the aliens, but in the end, they managed to get Amy out of there. Back on Gateway Station, Newt took time to heal and started writing a diary. She poured all her thoughts, experiences, and everything she'd witnessed during the alien infestation on Earth into this journal. Little did she know, this document would eventually end up in the hands of Captain McQuaid and would go on to become a crucial record of their fight against the alien menace. Aliens, genocide, heist for a xeno drug. In the alien universe, there's a drug called the Xenozip. Its most important ingredient is the royal jelly produced by a xenomorph queen mother. To some people, the drug gives some an intense feeling of well-being. Others experienced levels of their own being not normally perceived, and yet others had an orgasm that seemed to go on forever. Interestingly, the drug could be found in convenience stores and was produced by Neopharm, a subsidiary of Grant Corporation, which was owned by a billionaire named Daniel Grant. Now, the problem was that after the death of the queen mother, royal jelly had been exhausted. So Grant scientists started to replicate the royal jelly, but this artificial product was causing crazy reactions in humans. For instance, an athlete who took a dose crashed into a pillar and turned to paste because he just couldn't stop running. However, the military became interested in Xenozip and wanted Grant to supply this faulty Xenozip in exchange for helping him with an expedition to Xenomorph Prime so that he could extract some of the royal jelly. You see, if he continued to sell the faulty Xenozip in the market, he'd have drowned in multiple lawsuits. Major Alex Lee, a battle-hardened veteran with a history of fighting xenomorphs during Earth's cleanup, is thrust into command once again, but she's carrying the heavy burden of guilt over the death of her lover, Lieutenant Michaels, who died under her watch. Determined but haunted, Lee assembles her team, including a group of Grant Corporation scientists and Grant himself. They board the USS Razia, and after waking from hypersleep, the crew dives into intense training for their mission to the Xenomorph homeworld. Grant quickly rubs the Marines the wrong way with his abrasive attitude, but somehow he manages to strike up a friendship with a corporal named Henriksen. As the mission unfolds, Lee starts to see past Grant's rough exterior, finds herself unexpectedly drawn to him, but her feelings are tested when she discovers that Grant's scientists are secretly incubating a xenomorph chestburster aboard the Razia. Their twisted plan? To harvest royal jelly from the xenomorph homeworld and evolve the creature into a queen, giving Grant Corporation a limitless supply of the valuable substance. The situation takes a sharp turn when the chestburster is mysteriously sabotaged and killed. Suspicion flares, and though Major Lee denies any involvement, the tension within the team skyrockets, threatening to unravel everything they've worked for. To gear up for the mission, Grant scientists outfit the Marines with prototype acid-proof armor. The team then descends onto the Xenomorph homeworld. As they break through the thick clouds, they're hit with a shocking discovery. The Xenomorphs, after losing their original Queen Mother on Earth, have split into two warring factions. The familiar black Xenomorphs are now locked in a brutal civil war with a rival group of red creatures. Despite the chaos, the team pushes forward, securing a beachhead near the Black Hive using a projected outwall system. But when they attempt to expand, the perimeter is breached, and several Marines lose their lives. Grant, moved by the sacrifices made to secure royal jelly for his company, decides to join the team heading into the Black Hive. But as he suits up, he realizes his acid-proof armor has been sabotaged. Before he can react, a hidden xenomorph egg hatches, releasing a facehugger. Grant fights desperately for his life, but it's Major Lee who steps in and saves him. To tip the scales in their favor, the team launches a nuclear strike on the red xenomorph hive, obliterating the red queen mother and throwing the remaining red xenomorphs into chaos. The black xenomorphs, seeing their chance, chase down their rivals. With the black hive now mostly empty, the Marines move in, take down the remaining royal guards and the queen mother, and secure the royal jelly. As they prepare to leave, Henriksen, one of the Marines, reveals he's the saboteur, bribed by a rival company. In the ensuing struggle, Major Lee is wounded, but she and Grant manage to take down Henriksen and escape the planet with the surviving crew. Back aboard the Razia, as Major Lee recovers, she sets up a date with Grant. Deeply affected by the sacrifices made during the mission, Grant vows to become a better man, ready to leave his old ways behind. Aliens Harvest, a desperate scientist's quest on Xenomorph Prime. It's fascinating to see how brilliance can emerge in desperate times, and Dr. Stanislav Mayakovsky was no exception. A cybernetics expert, often referred to as a cybernetics Buddha, Mayakovsky was diagnosed with terminal cancer and had little time left. The options for a cure were slim, but his doctor offered something to help with the pain and other symptoms: Xenozip. That night, Mayakovsky received an unexpected visitor, Julian Lish, aka Julie, a beautiful thief. She knocked on his door, claiming to have something important to discuss, and the ailing cybernetics expert couldn't bring himself to turn her away. Julie knew everything about Mayakovsky's condition, including the fact that he was running out of both both time and money. She was also aware that he wasn't happy with the people supplying him with Xenozip, so she proposed an idea. Instead of relying on others for the drug, why not go straight to the source? In other words, she suggested they extract the royal jelly from Xenomorph Prime. The idea seemed impossible. A thief and a dying man taking on such a dangerous mission. But this is where Dr. Mayakovsky's expertise came into play. He previously created a cybernetic ant named Ari, a synthetic creature that successfully infiltrated an ant colony. Julie knew about this and posed a simple question. Why can't an artificial alien penetrate their society? She wasn't wrong. In a universe where androids are indistinguishable from humans, why not create a synthetic xenomorph to infiltrate a hive? If they succeeded, they'd have access to unlimited wealth without ever having to face the danger directly. Julie had even found the exact location of the xenomorph hives on the home planet. That night, they did more than just talk. Their connection deepened, and Mayakovsky was convinced. He created a synthetic xenomorph, dubbed XL-1, which Julie suggested naming Norbert. With their plan in motion, they assembled a crew and secured a spaceship called Dolomite, setting off on this wildly ambitious and equally dangerous mission. It wasn't long before they reached the orbit of A6454, aka Xenomorph Prime, the isolated planet so far off the beaten path that it hadn't even been officially surveyed. As the crew emerged from hypersleep, Mayakovsky and Julie gathered everyone for the mission briefing, though they kept the true nature of their objective on a strictly need-to-know basis. While the briefing was underway, Mac, the crew's dog, wandered in, closely followed by Norbert, the synthetic xenomorph. Mayakovsky tried to reassure the crew that Norbert wouldn't attack unless provoked, but he failed to realize that the crew had no idea what Norbert really was. Seeing the confused reactions of the men and women around it, Norbert felt threatened. In a swift, brutal retaliation, it began killing indiscriminately. Chaos erupted, and Mayakovsky was forced to override Norbert's commands to stop the carnage. Despite the bloodshed, the crew pressed forward with the mission. Hoban, the captain of the Dolomite, remained in orbit with the synthetic Jill, while Mayakovsky, Julie, Norbert, and Mac prepared to descend to the planet's surface in a dropship. Their dangerous journey was just beginning, and no one could predict what awaited them below. Meanwhile, the Dolomite discovered the wreckage of another ship. 2 crew members were sent aboard to retrieve the black box, hoping to uncover what had happened and whether it could jeopardize their own mission. They soon learned that the ship had been brought down due to a criminal trespass, likely by someone else in the area. As this was happening, Norbert and the team were descending toward the planet's surface. Julie was stunned to see the hive towering nearly 1,000 meters high, dwarfing the planet's tallest natural peak, which barely reached 350 meters. It was a stark reminder of the sheer scale of the xenomorph threat. Norbert and Mac stepped out onto the barren, irradiated terrain. It might have seemed odd to send a dog into such danger, but in the alien universe, the line between bravery and madness is often blurred. Initially, Norbert couldn't detect anything with his infrared sensors, so he switched to ultrasonics and soon discovered a xenomorph, apparently asleep or unconscious. A strange and suspicious behavior for the creatures. Even more puzzling, Mac found several more dormant xenomorphs near another ship. As the crew from the other ship approached Mac, surprised to find a dog in such a hostile environment, Norbert suddenly attacked. In the ensuing chaos, Norbert killed one of the men while the others fled, locking themselves inside their ship. Mayakovsky ordered Norbert to examine the locking mechanism, which turned out to be fairly standard. Following instructions, Norbert ripped out the keypad and forced the door open, killing the remaining men inside. To their surprise, they also discovered a massive stash of royal jelly on board. However, the fight had damaged the infrasonic system that was keeping the xenomorph subdued, much like a beekeeper uses smoke to calm bees. With that system compromised, the xenomorphs outside began to stir. Mayakovsky, eager to test Norbert's ability to blend in with the xenomorphs, ordered him to go outside with Mac, fully aware that this would likely mean the dog's death. Norbert activated his tracking system so the crew could follow his movements and ventured into a world governed by complex molecular chemistry. The xenomorphs communicated through pheromones, and Norbert carefully tested the air, searching for signs of these chemical signals. He reached the hive and observed the creatures for a while. The xenomorphs moved with a precise and unique purpose, some carrying food, others tending to the ovomorphs. Norbert could even hear the clicking of the ovomorphs, a sound beyond human hearing, and followed it to the hive's heart, the queen's chamber. But Norbert wasn't supposed to enter the queen's nest. When a xenomorph drone sensed something was off, noticing a missing scent on Norbert, it blocked his path, adopting a defensive stance. Realizing that he was in serious trouble, Norbert made a desperate dash for safety. However, he was quickly overwhelmed by the swarm, and his signals went dead. Back at their location, Jill, Mayakovsky, and Julie were preparing to return to the Dolomite. One of them was supposed to take the ship loaded with royal jelly back to the Dolomite, but before they could execute their plan, a sudden storm hit, leaving them stranded on the planet's hostile surface with no way out in sight. As dusk settled over A6454, the two humans and a synthetic waited for nightfall, knowing that the Hive's activity would soon reach its peak. The raging storm outside left them with no choice but to take a dangerous gamble. They'd seek shelter inside the Hive itself, hoping to find an exit on the other side. They relied on their inhibitors, devices that made them invisible to the Xenomorphs within a 3-meter radius. As they cautiously entered the Hive, step by step, they moved silently among the biomechanical predators, who sensed something was amiss but couldn't pinpoint the source. As they ventured deeper, they stumbled upon the Midden, the Hive's garbage dump, where they found Mac's mangled carcass, torn apart and partially eaten. Mayakovsky, determined to retrieve the dog's collar, which held another inhibitor, reached out but lost his footing, tumbling into the pit of bones and blood. The cry of pain that escaped him broke the silence, shattering the fragile shield of secrecy they'd maintained. Suddenly, the Xenomorphs could see them. Jill and Julie opened fire as a Xenomorph charged at Mayakovsky, but to his shock, it wasn't a typical Xenomorph, it was Norbert. The synthetic creature, forged from Mayakovsky's own design, transformed its body into weapons and fought fiercely to defend its creator. As Norbert battled the swarm of Xenomorphs, the others made a desperate bid to escape, climbing through the Hive's chimney in hopes of reaching safety. But the situation rapidly spiraled out of control. The rest of the story follows Mayakovsky and his companions in their frantic struggle to survive, all the while waiting for the Dolomite to rescue them. A rescue that ultimately ends in disaster. Other appearances of the alien homeworld Xenomorph Prime in Aliens vs. Predator 2010. In the Predator ending of the 2010 Aliens vs. Predator video game, we get a glimpse of Xenomorph Prime, Dark Predator. One of the game's 3 protagonists acquires the Lord Predator biomask, which contains the location and a holographic view of the planet. The initial scan reveals alien eggs and young Xenomorph queens scattered across the surface. With this intel, Dark sets his course for Xenomorph Prime, and the game leaves the story open-ended, hinting at a potential sequel that could have taken place on this deadly world. The Orion Nebula in Alien vs. Predator SNES. In the Aliens vs. Predator SNES video game, a lone predator ventures to an alien-infested planet located in the Orion Nebula. Likely meant to be Xenomorph Prime as depicted in the comics, is a hellish landscape covered in rocks and hive-like structures. The predator faces waves of Xenomorphs, battling his way through the hostile terrain before finally confronting and defeating the alien queen. With his mission complete, the predator leaves the desolate world behind. Hive Wars Predator struggle on Xenomorph Prime. The Hive Wars Predator had a rough go on Xenomorph Prime. Stranded after his hunting party was wiped out and their ship broke down, this Predator had to rely on his wits and resourcefulness to survive. Crafting weapons from the wreckage of the Predator ship, he fought off countless Xenomorphs, killing dozens if not hundreds in his desperate struggle. Though he managed to endure years on the planet, his story of survival and badassery eventually came to an end in the Predator Life and Death comic series, where he was finally taken down by colonial marines. The Hive Wars Predator was originally a Kenner figure from the 90s, and NECA later revived the character, solidifying his place in the Alien vs. Predator lore. So that was all about Xenomorph Prime, the homeworld of the nasty biomechanical monsters. If you liked the video, do hang around with us because we've lots more alien videos lined up.